Alright, hopefully you all have been able to see Godzilla. Hopefully you're one of the ones who contributed to Godzilla making a shit tillion dollars this last weekend. And in what has become kind of a tradition that's not actually a tradition, because I won't do this with every movie, but it's kind of a tradition, I'm gonna do a spoiler video for Godzilla. That's an official spoiler warning. If you're one of the people who watched $1 Million Arm this last weekend, well, go ahead and stick around for this video to figure out why you should have seen this instead. So Godzilla starts out with Bryan Cranston. Bryan Cranston's killing it because he's Bryan Cranston. He's like, I don't need to do anything else in the world, but I will, because acting is fun. And he gives the most emotional moment in the entire movie in the first 10-15 minutes of the movie. He works at this nuclear plant. This nuclear reactor is melting down. His wife is down there because he sent her down there, and this thing is just melting down, and she's running, and he's like, I gotta make the tough call, and he seals his door before she can escape, and she dies right in front of him. Yeah, you remember Star Trek: The Next Generation when Counselor Troy was going up for a promotion, and she was doing that simulator, and ultimately she would get the promotion when she learned she had to send someone to die of radiation? Yeah, it took her an hour to learn that shit. Bryan Cranston has to do it in the first 10 to 15 minutes of this movie, and it's his wife. Yeah, that's rough shit. So after that, Bryan Cranston's going crazy, but he's not actually crazy because he's right. He's like, they're hiding something. And sure enough, they are hiding something. I was like, all right, they're hiding Godzilla. Godzilla's gonna, and the thing hatches, and I'm like, that's not Godzilla. That's that weird bat arm thing we saw in the trailer. Right there out the gate, I was like, cool, this movie is already throwing the unexpected at me because I didn't think that would be the actual monster that's terrorizing the world. I thought it was gonna be Godzilla, but you find out Godzilla is the great equalizer. Then Bryan Cranston dies, and I was like, wait, we're already attached to this guy. His wife died. We saw him cry. He was right about everything. He's dead? So now we get this really statuesque army guy that we're now gonna bond with, but we're not really gonna bond with because he seems emotionally distant, but you know, you still empathize with him because he's, you know, your common guy. Not as good as Bryan Cranston though, but the point is this monster was really cool because it would send out EMP pulses. I was like, that's awesome. They're from this prehistoric time, which, you know, that would make sense to have EMP pulses in prehistoric times because of all those electronics that dinosaurs were using. So this thing is tromping through looking for radiation to feed on because it's gonna lay eggs and shit, and there's another one out there. And there's a scene at the airport, and that was the scene where I was like, what? Is when you see Godzilla, it's the execution is what it is. That's why with the fact that you don't see the fight at the airport is so irritating, because the way it's executed, it looks like you're gonna see the thing. This monster's being a big dick, and then all of a sudden you hear this kaboom, you see the foot, kadoom, it's Godzilla, kadoom, and you see him, it pans up, you're like, oh, it's Dino Jesus, and he looks cool. It pans up, you see him, and he does that roar, that he looks like Godzilla. I love the fact that he looks like Godzilla. There was a point in time in cinema, probably, yeah, it was the 90s. If we remade something, we felt like we had to make it look different, but we don't feel like that anymore. We're like, yeah, Godzilla, he looked good for the time, yeah, so let's just make him look like Godzilla. It's good creature design back then, it's a good creature design now. You don't need to make Godzilla look like Doomsday with AIDS or anything like that. You can just go ahead and make him look like Godzilla, and that's what they did in this movie. But with an intro like that, we're gonna see the fight, and we don't see the fight. You see the fight in the background taking place on the news and shit, and you're like, I feel like I'm missing it. The fact that you see it in the background on newscasts, it taunts you. Dangles it in front of your face like a piece of bait. It's like, nah, no. Throw away. You don't get that. And I get it. They want to draw it out. They're drawing out the anticipation. You can't give people dessert right out the gate. It doesn't change the fact that everyone who saw this movie, even if you're this Godzilla purist who are like, actually, Godzilla didn't appear in the original Godzilla until the last 15 minutes of the movie. They're just hearkening back to that. Even if you're that person, you were still like, God, fuck, I wanted to see that fight. Even when the dickbag EMP monster gets to Vegas, it's Vegas. Everyone wants to see Vegas get destroyed by a big monster. And when that happens, you ultimately see the aftermath. It's like, oh, by the way, that thing tromped through Vegas. That sucks. I wanted to see this thing beating buildings down. I wanted to see him look at the Hilton and be like, fuck you and your night vision porn movie. But the movie has a great tone to it, you know? Things are creepy, they're creepy, and eerie, and they're eerie, and you feel like civilization's coming to an end in this movie, and that's the point of the movie for sure. Skipping forward to the end, because that's what you want to hear me talk about here. Godzilla confronts the big beast to fight him because he's the great equalizer. He's like, I need to restore balance to the force. And they start fighting, and when they're scrapping hard. And like I said, Pacific Rim did it more extravagant. I mean, Godzilla doesn't carry a big boat like it's a baseball bat and crack anyone over the head with it. But when they're throwing each other into buildings and scrapping, you're like, I feel like that's exactly how that would look if this happened in my world. Which creates an element of realism you can't take for granted. That's actually really good. And when I saw Godzilla's fins light up blue, it's all boom, 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 boom. I was like, oh, sure enough, he's all, he shoots the fire and you're like, done. He impales one of the monsters, it dies. The other one, how he kills it, I gotta be honest with you. Of 2014, this is probably the best death ever yet. He grabs the thing by the mouth. We're talking just like straight, and he just has it right there, and he's all, And by spitting, I mean he breathes fire down the thing's neck. Just and just burns away his neck, and he's just holding the head. Godzilla wins. That is that. Doesn't matter that he contributed to billions of dollars of property damage. This does not matter anymore. We erect a statue in his honor because that death was awesome. Yeah, Godzilla shows up at the end of the movie to kick ass, and that was disappointing for me. It was disappointing for some other people. Purists out there are like, not to me, because that's how it is. And that's where we're all gonna differ and vary. Point is, Godzilla is still a cool movie. Yeah, they're gonna make a sequel. Are you kidding me? If something like Godzilla makes money in the box office, they make a sequel to it. That's just what's gonna happen. So the question is, what are they gonna do in the sequel? So for a Godzilla sequel, what do you think's gonna happen in it? What do you think the monster is gonna be in the next one? Whatever you think, comment below, let me know. As this does conclude my spoiler video on Godzilla, I'm Jeremy Jahns, here to remind you there are two kinds of people in the world. People who pronounce his name Ken Watanabe and people who pronounce his name Ken Watanabe. Those are the two people. And as always, if you like what you've seen here and you wanna see more, click right here to see more.